Hello, this is Courtney Allen, and welcome to our webcast on cost management. In this webcast today, I'm going to talk about cost management. I'll talk about the effects COVID-19 has had on business operations, and then I'll talk about an example of how some large industrial operations manage costs effectively and how they incorporate EPM tools to help them do this. Organizations are incurring significant costs due to current and future impacts of COVID-19. Examples are spoiled inventories or supplies, operating costs incurred to reduce losses such as outsourced production, setup expenses for internet service, customer pickup or delivery services, screenings for all employees and visitors, clean and decontaminate facilities, equipment, supplies, and inventory, production delays due to supply chain disruptions, production delays due to installation of protective shields for food processing, supplies and protective gear to deal with COVID-19, expenditures to move students out of dorms and convert classes to online, laptops or network equipment costs to provide employees remote access. All sorts of responses have been made to approach and respond to this COVID-19 pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been feast or famine for many businesses. Even for those businesses seeing a market increase in sales, some are only seeing it occur in only one part of their business and not in others. They can't really justify spending CapEx on what may turn out to be a short-term spike in demand. But they certainly need to figure out how to become more efficient and try to meet the sudden increase in demand. If COVID-19 has caused your sales demand to be cut in half, maybe you can slow down operations, run at a lower capacity to match your new projected volumes to reduce costs. You may find that you have to rebalance your operations to meet the new normal. You need EPM tools to analyze the data and quickly set up new plans to operate in response to fast-changing market conditions. You need to be able to capture information in your reporting systems with narrative reporting so that you can document everything that was done so that it becomes basically a modulation program for the next event that comes along. So you don't necessarily have to scramble to figure out how to respond all over again. You can use scenarios, use scenario modeling or planning. Setups for planning prepared and laid out in your systems will help you respond to extreme high volumes or low volume events in the future. Since the COVID-19 outbreak has had such a devastating effect on businesses, modulating power to lights and potentially to machinery where factory operations are down can have a serious impact on costs. You may be able to justify spending capital to squeeze additional costs out of your operations. For example, you may explore investments in anything as small as lighting. Something as insignificant as lighting could have huge paybacks for operations running huge, massive warehouses and factories. They have these lights on 24 hours a day, every day, whether there are people there or not. It may make sense to invest in motion detection lighting to save on energy costs. You want to be able to analyze data from your operations to determine what equipment runtime is associated with higher energy costs. Some of the best run industrial operations have a certain approach to managing costs. Some really focus on costs from production of the product all the way through to transport. So basically, organizations need to become more efficient at logistics costs. If you're a large company and you have 5 to 10 different facilities, maybe each one of those facilities is regionalized and produce different SKUs, or part of a product is made in one facility but not in others. In some cases, it makes sense to strategically spread your production facilities across the country to potentially lower transport costs. There's diminishing returns associated with that, and that's where modeling comes in. You can't just say we'll make every SKU everywhere because now the cost of that product goes up everywhere because the economies of scale get lost at the entity that has that volume. Loss or scrap factor becomes a larger portion of your variable costs as you divide the volume across more and more entities. For example, every time each entity produces, say, 20,000 units, they may scrap or lose 500. But in a larger production run at a single entity, the scrap factor may be much smaller. So economies of scale are very important. You can't go too far because it drives up costs on the product and you lose margin that way. Some leading organizations develop internal competition across production facilities to encourage continuous improvement to lower costs while maintaining or improving quality. Dashboards can facilitate this process. All of the production facilities can basically see the costs of other production facilities. When some facilities find a competitive advantage over their peers in a region, they may take volume away from those peers as a result of the cost model shifting to the more efficient production facilities. When costs are lower at one facility and volume is decreasing, the lesser efficient facilities start having difficulty hitting their targets. This incentivizes a change to reduce costs by driving out any fat buried in their standard costs, making them make their process become leaner. You start getting managers to talk about true, honest, raw numbers. Once you get to this point, you have good numbers, good costs, and good balance. This approach gets challenged from time to time, and it's basically always in flux. Models to support this kind of process require fast, reliable data. You need a performance management suite of products to help you analyze and plan. This can help drive those cost calculations and help you visualize for all levels of management the kinds of decisions you need to make and when. It may be hard at first to take these models, which are often buried in spreadsheets and pivot tables and managed and maintained by super users. There are much better tools available. Being nimble and able to analyze big data is no longer an option. It is critically necessary. And Excel is fine on a small scale, but trying to model a large complex operation takes more than that. A lot of mergers and acquisitions are justified based on a company's track record for being able to run a leaner, more efficient operation and drive those unnecessary costs out. When facilities become lean and start to realize efficiencies that have never been seen before, they can't just rest on that. They have to continuously improve. The organization as a whole needs to have a culture that says, that's not good enough. We can still do better. Sometimes management says, for example, in your next budget, take your final cost in the prior year and cut that by 1%. We want a 1% savings. You can tell us how you're going to do it, but that's your target. Global managers leverage best practices from wherever they can find it in their operations around the world. They've done benchmarking. So for whatever performance metric you can think of, if you're making a particular product in basically the same way all around the world, then there's probably 30 plus KPIs or performance metrics that all could have a profound impact on the amount of costs that go into making your product. They may not be cost KPIs, they may be more like loss factors. Materials loss on your production line, like machine uptime or operational equipment efficiencies. Those sorts of things are calculated in your systems by taking all of the time you have during the week to produce and run your production line. You fully staffed it. So how much volume did you get out of it? What was your productivity? Those performance indicators are run across the board for every facility. They are calculated the same way for every facility across the globe and make them available for everyone to see via dashboards. You may have 100 facilities all over the world, and if some country has facilities that are standing out as the least efficient, management will have zero tolerance when they bring up your budget and challenge to lower costs. As the least efficient, you can't push back and say, no, I don't think we can do it. You can see all the other facilities that are able to make their numbers. So then you have to justify what number you can get to. There may be good reasons why your facility can't easily join the leading more efficient operations, but there may be areas that can be improved more easily through better cost management and loss reduction. That's where benchmarking comes in. Start comparing your operations to those of your peers. It should be very clear because you've developed centralized systems where every facility is calculating the same way. When it's clear which facility is the best managed, you should put together a trip for all of the subject matter experts and regional zone technical experts to go out and visit that facility to do comparisons. They will compare processes between the locations and find that maybe there is something as simple as a piece of equipment that is making the difference. The decision may be simply to spend CapEx to bring the lagging facility up to the leading standard. While some of it could be just a less efficient process that should involve fewer steps, this could just be a loss that does not need to be accepted in the process, and then this just becomes a quick adoption of a new standard process that cascades across all facilities that is where it is applicable for that cost savings, so that it can start flowing from that point. Because you've taken something that was learned in one facility, and maybe they learned it because they had to face a catastrophe that they needed to respond to. Maybe that issue was a price of some key raw material that was needed for production. Maybe it went up so much that they needed to find an alternative. That happened. That happened to in the process. They happened to discover a better way as a result of the predicament that they were in. Management should take a close look at that sort of thing and determine whether that idea should be implemented at other facilities as well. Just because the cost is fine right now at those other facilities, that doesn't mean they can't still take advantage of a viable option to reduce cost further. The driving force for all of this is to have systems in place to deliver data that allows you to make informed decisions and develop a culture where every facility is competing against one another to help drive down costs for the company as a whole. But still, at the same time, the facilities must also have the willingness to learn and share knowledge with one another. It shouldn't require a lot of work for a facility, say in Texas, to learn from a facility in India what they are doing in order to keep costs down on a specific operation. When it comes to target setting for budgets, management becomes part of the solution, where the expectation is that there is basically a two-way communication to determine what is it or what is that they are doing or not doing that they should be doing that should be considered best practices. Management does a collection of best practices for just about every major cost category in these organizations. For example, they might have a study done on electricity, and then from that they'll prescribe best practices or best operating practices. So facility management will periodically review and answer several questions confirming what they are following. How are they following those best practices? They have to be able to answer yes to all of those questions In the early stages of implementing a process like this, facilities may only be able to answer yes to, say, 20% of those questions. In most cases, it was a matter of not having updated equipment or not having the CapEx approval to bring it online. The other reasons may require a discussion with management to explain more as to what they could work on together to remedy the situations. But over time, those facilities that were lagging behind will eventually improve their score and fall more in line with the standard best practices. Management will use reporting tools and dashboards to start lining up best practices scores with the cost and key performance metrics for each facility, and they can start connecting the dots such that they can see at a high level where the red and green are in the stoplight charts, and they can see who needs help, and they can send subject matter experts to those sites to address the problem. They will put together a prioritization of what tasks need to happen or what things can be done from a CapEx standpoint that makes sense for the next year, and what things can happen now because they are such low-hanging fruit. Management will make sure that budgets are lined up for it next year, and will eventually start cutting costs out of their budgets as efficiencies are brought online. If the facility doesn't execute fast enough, they start missing their targets and have basically targets that they have set out in the plans. Those best practices laid out for the organization become essentially a license to operate. It's not a recommendation. These are things that have to be followed. These are best practices that can be quantifiable for each facility, so you can actually score each facility for their performance against the best practices. Let's review some EPM tools that can help with the cost management process. With EPM Enterprise Planning, you can do driver-based planning. This is where you identify key cost drivers and then create a series of business plans that mathematically model how those costs will change based on things like product mix or other business decisions. Oracle's Predictive Planning functionality allows users to optimize their planning and forecasting estimates via a rigorous pre-built statistical modeling engine. With a few easy clicks, Predictive Planning will collect historical data, match it to one of several industry standard statistical models, and generate a dashboard offering predictions for future results. Within this dashboard, users can compare their submitted data and the predicted data, review the data sets for accuracy, and then, when appropriate, apply the predicted values directly into their plan or forecast. With Oracle EPM Cloud Profitability and Cost Management, users will have a platform that will provide for performance reporting, basically combining financial and operational data. Users can perform complex multi-step allocations and calculations. This tool delivers detailed data for management reporting across many different systems. This is a business-focused analytical solution providing an easily accessible platform with timely, relevant analytics to make actionable performance information available to leaders across all levels of the organization. Strategic modeling provides on-the-fly scenario analysis and modeling with financial forecast modeling, so that your operational plans, long-range plans, and financial strategy align. The strategic modeling business process is comprised of one or more models. You perform long-term strategic planning within those models. Models contain predefined reporting and modeling standards and are populated with a hierarchical chart of accounts, a time structure, reports, data views, account groups, and all the metadata from the template or the model from which it was created. Every account uses a unique forecast method to project account values in future time periods. You can investigate the components that contribute to cell values. You determine how a value is calculated by using audit trail. From any cell, you can drill to notice the values that contributed to the cell value. Narrative reporting provides users with a collaborative reporting environment. Automating integration of narrative into performance reporting. Users now have the ability to explain performance along with their data values. This can significantly improve the quality of reporting that is possible. In the past, this was a very time-consuming manual process. Please mark your calendar for our upcoming webcasts. We have on June 3rd, cash flow. On June 10th, we have reporting. On June 17th, we have data visualization. On June 24th, we're going to have long live Essbase, the present and the future. On July 1st, we'll have from data to story in 30 minutes or less. And on July 3rd, we'll have EPM Cloud and OAC together at PIMCO. And finally, please note that Oracle Planning customers can utilize strategic modeling and financial planning free for 1 year. At NRL, we can help implement strategic modeling for you. And typically this can be done in less time than you've been locked down. This is basically 6 weeks or less. So please contact us at info@nrl.com. Thank you.